Project Coordinator Danga Muwowo joins us in studio for more on this. Thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it. 9 cities described as being in financial crisis. Johannesburg, Cape Town, eThekwini on that list. It's quite surprising.
It is surprising, and one of the things that we wanted to emphasize is actually this crisis is not an immediate crisis. As you can imagine, when you launch a report, you want to grab the headlines. It's actually a systemic crisis that's a medium to long-term crisis, and it really is around the financial model that the cities have. So what we are arguing is, in fact, that cities face 2 long-term systemic problems. The first around financing infrastructure, which is where this capital gap that we talk about comes from. And the capital gap is the monies that cities are not able to actually raise based on their operating surpluses to address the maintenance of infrastructure that already exists, as well as the new infrastructure they need to build with increasing urbanization over the next long-term 30, 40, 50-year time frame.
Yeah. What about poorly managing funds? Is that a major factor in this? Because you have the Auditor General raising concerns about municipalities, cities in particular, and how they manage their money. Is that a factor?
Not so much, in fact. The South African Cities Network focuses on the 8 metros plus Msunduzi, and what we find is in the metros, issues such as irregular, wasteful expenditure are not so much of a problem. In fact, it's only about 1.4% of cities' overall turnover. So in fact, it's not a problem in terms of managing that money. There are definitely some revenue efficiencies that could be found. There are also some efficiencies around spending money, and these are things that are pointed out particularly from National Treasury. But however, in the larger metros, the larger cities we have in the country, they really are not representative of the rest of the municipalities.
It's quite interesting because I read that tackling unauthorized, irregular, fruitless expenditure is actually not going to help solve the problem. So what will?
What will solve the problem, I think, is addressing the systemic financing problem that we've identified. So one of the big things that we have noticed is that the city revenue model is actually predicated on property rates. Cities, as we know, receive a local government equitable share, but that primarily covers the indigents who live within the city and allows the city to provide basic services to them. The only discretionary revenue, meaning the revenue that cities generate and then are able to use as they see fit, is in fact from property rates, and it's by far the largest portion of that. However, the problem with property rates as a source of revenue is that you're then encouraged to sprawl the city. In other words, to allow new development on the periphery, which, guess what, is contradictory to the infrastructure plans that we have in the cities, is contradictory to the urban policies that we've had since the local government white paper in 1998, and indeed the integrated urban development framework, which we've had since 2016, which says that we should densify cities. So cities are being incentivized in a perverse logic that's contrary to what we want them to do.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is one of the other big systemic problems we have identified in the report.
So if we continue on this path, I'm sure that people will be largely affected by this.
Absolutely. People who, for the most part, especially the majority of the residents, who are forced to live on the periphery. Unfortunately, the policy since 1994 in terms of building RDP housing and settlements for citizens who do not have income and means have been on the periphery, which is actually contrary to the policy that we would have liked to have seen. And by the same token, those residents now have a long way to commute to work and to get to the places where they need to be every day. Yeah. That is a big problem. So another major finding of our report, and one of the things we'd like people to take away, is that we need to think about how we actually are going to finance the spatial transformation that we agree is an imperative post-1994 to change the apartheid spatial structure of our cities, which I think we can all agree has really not changed very much.
So have you actually approached the cities, the provinces that govern the cities, and national government to raise these concerns to try to get them on the right path?
Absolutely. We are part of the South African Local Government Association, which we liaise with and we speak to them. They are the official body of local government and are able to present concerns in the policy space through reports like this one, the South African Cities Network State of Cities report, which comes out every 2 years. We present findings that support some of the things that we're saying, and we hope when this dense report lands on people's desks that they actually read it. However, it's through opportunities such as this to speak to it, through op-eds, through people writing in the press. It allows us to get to a wider audience, which is what we think we really need. And we do, in fact, argue that cities themselves need more intervention from the national government in terms of assisting with these policy issues that we've identified, in terms of recognizing the role that cities actually play, the fact that 40% of citizens live in cities, 60% if you include urban and peri-urban areas, so it's the majority of the population. And so it's a very important issue, and that the national government and provincial government need to consider local government and specifically cities in a particular way because they face particular challenges that, for example, rural areas don't face in quite the same way.
Yeah, it's astounding. Thank you so much for your time and your insight.